Hello, and welcome to this episode of Women in Engineering Success Stories from STEM Professionals. Today, I'm thrilled to sit down with Tammy Alvarez, CEO of the Career Winners Circle, author, professional keynote speaker, inspirational coach, and former corporate executive, about navigating career changes, empowering women to become the CEOs of their own careers, and finding fulfillment in engineering roles. I am your host, Tiffany Teachy, a senior mechanical engineer, STEM advocate, TEDx international speaker, and an internationally recognized author of children's books, including What Can I Be?, STEM Careers from A to Z, and STEM Crew Kids Adventures series. I also host the Read It Right radio show on WDRB Media, owner of the Thrive Edge Publishing, and owner publishing consultant of Inspired Authors Publishing. And with that, let's jump right into today's episode. It's time to jump right into the main segment of our episode. Today, I have with me Tammy Alvarez. Tammy, welcome to the Women in Engineering podcast.
And thank you so much for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this conversation for weeks now. So thanks for the invite.
Yes. So Tammy, can you start by telling us a bit about yourself and your career journey that led you to become the CEO of the Career Winners Circle?
Yes, it's full of drama and intrigue. So we'll take it from the top, right? I spent most of my corporate career as an executive on Wall Street. So my team was known as the transformation experts. When there was drama and intrigue, my team was running in to save the day. And fortunately, in financial services, there was always drama and intrigue and something to fix. And at the height of my time in my corporate career, I was managing about 2,000 people in 35 countries and solving some of the biggest problems. And I absolutely loved my corporate career until I didn't. And I remember having this moment where I was just in this meeting and I had this out-of-body experience where I felt like everybody's arguing around the table and there was everybody shouting and blaming each other for the bad earnings that we had just had. And my boss was just having a fit. And so I just remember having that, it felt like a movie where I was over the table just watching what was happening. And I just realized that I no longer cared about what was going on. And about 6 months after that, I had moved to a tropical island off the coast of Belize and cashed out of corporate America and started this coaching business. And I think my entrepreneurial journey has probably been one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. And I've taken a lot of big risks in my career, but my untraditional upbringing really gave me the tools to be able to succeed and focus on helping other women in STEM fields do the same thing for their careers. And so when I was a teenager, my parents had split up. No big deal. That was happening all the time. It was all the rage. But the issue was a little bit after my father had left, my mom, my sister, and I became homeless. And I didn't go to college. I didn't get my college degree until I was 40. And yet I had started this corporate career because I had no ambition. My grades weren't very good. And I definitely didn't have any money to go to college. And so the way I was able to create my path was different because I was typically the only woman. And I was the youngest leader. And I was always in male-dominated industries. And so that's really where my passion in helping women in those STEM fields really be able to step into and own their power as technical experts, as leaders, and, being able to do that through the Career Winners Circle has been just the best part of my entire career.
Wow. And I think that's much needed to see that there's a need out there and that your company's doing that. I mean, now more, and your title of it is amazing. The Winner's Circle. I love it. I mean, you're trying to encourage it as well. So the Career Winner's Circle. So talk to us and tell us what have been the big turning points in your career path and why has it been so important to you?
Yeah, I think that the biggest turning point for me, and it took me way too long to learn this. I really wish I had learned this earlier. The biggest turning point for me was realizing that me being different, because I'd never looked like everybody else, right? I was always the oddball out. And I always thought that was my Achilles heel. And as it turned out, it was actually my superpower. And I didn't know that. So I spent years and maybe a decade trying to fit in, trying to be like everybody else, and trying to hide the fact that I was different. And then when I realized that that's the reason I was there, it just changed everything for me. And I learned this through, it was interesting. I was leading a big transformation initiative around the financial crisis. And I was in this guy's office who was a very, very, very senior leader. And I needed him to do something in the EU that he didn't want to do. And so we were screaming at each other, literally, because that's how we communicated, right? So whoever, yells loudest wins type thing. And I was terrified, but I wasn't going to show that I was afraid. And as we were in the middle of this argument, the phone rings. And he puts it on speaker because I know he did this on purpose. And as soon as I heard the voice on the other end of the phone, my jaw dropped. It was John McCain. And it was the day after the very first presidential debate with Barack Obama. And the conversation basically was like, hey, dude, how'd I do last night? And so he continued to give John feedback on how he did during the debate. I was like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. This is ridiculous. And so, I listened, tried not to seem like awestruck, and then, lost the argument, of course, right? So went back to my boss's office, closed her door, and started ranting like a lunatic. I'm like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't belong here. Like, I'm not this. I'm not this. I'm all these things. And she just let me rant for a little bit. And she had an all glass office. So I'm sure people thought I was losing my stuff here. And then she just laughed and she's like, are you done? I'm like, yeah, I think I feel better now. And she's like, you are here because you are not part of the problem. You're here because you are different. You're here because you test, you challenge, you ask the questions that no one's willing to ask, and you get things done. And it was at that moment that I heard and understood that I was there because I wasn't like everyone else. It took me a few months to actually test and prove that to myself. But I think had I learned that earlier, and I think as leaders, we should learn this earlier in terms of instead of trying to feel weird and like we don't belong and like we're the odd man out or women out in this case, take that opportunity to really use that as your superpower.
I love it. I love it. I mean, that's the biggest piece. There's some uniqueness that you can bring to the table. And I love how you said, utilize that because you do bring something
absolutely
to the table.
Absolutely. So. And I think our unique position, sometimes we quiet ourselves because it is a unique position. We automatically assume, no matter how smart we are, that somebody else has already thought of it and thought it was a bad idea. Or maybe it's a dumb question and I should know the answer to this. And those types of things. And I think getting comfortable with being able to ask those questions, more often than not, you will figure out that was actually the question that everyone will need to hear and to answer.
Yes. That's it right there. Now, as a fellow author, I'm an author as well. I love it to meet another fellow author and say, you recently wrote a book called Escaping the Career Trap. Transform your apathy into ambition and never hate Mondays again. Oh, wow. What was that?
That right? Yeah.
Yeah. What was that journey like for you? And what inspired you to write?
Well, I always knew I wanted to write a book. And the timing was never right. And I wanted to, when I started the business, 6 years ago, I'm like, I need to write a book. All coaches write a book. I should do this. And then I had a very, very good mentor who sat me down and he's like, Tammy, the only thing you need to focus on right now is generating revenue. All the other shiny objects have to wait because without money, without customers, you have no business. And I was like, actually, that's a really good point. And so it was always on the list of things to do. And year after year, it just moved from, my strategy. And we had left Belize after living there for 5 years and moved to Mexico City. And so the first few months that we lived here, we couldn't speak the language very well. I had no friends. And so I had all this time that I normally would not have had. And so I'm like, now is the time to write the book. And we were actually hosting a cocktail party in our building to meet some of our neighbors and stuff. And they were, all talking about what we do. And, there's a lot of Mexicans as well as expats that, that had come to the party. And I was trying to explain like how I help, mid to senior level leaders pivot into careers that they love and just get out of that soul crushing grind. And then that's where I explained well, why do people feel stuck? And I kind of talked about how it felt like the escape room. You know how those games where you go in as teams and try and solve these riddles? And like how people feel like that in their careers, but there's no answer key. No one has the lock, which is why there's golden handcuffs, right, on the cover of the book. And so that's where the career trap kind of came from in terms of having that conversation. But writing the book for me was fast. It took me 3 months to get it written. Editing the book took 6. Right, because I had all the teachings and all the things from my own history. There's stories and career journeys of 35 other people that are in the book. So that was probably the most fun for me, was interviewing clients, colleagues, business partners on just their journey and how they ultimately found, their way out of the soul crushing grind. And, so the whole process was so much fun. I think the launch party was probably my favorite part though. So we had the launch party in April of this year and it was just great, just being around so many people and meeting so many new people as well. So the journey was exciting. I'm not sure I would do it again. Kind of like having a baby, right? You don't have, it was like, as soon as you have that baby, it's like, when's your next one? It's like, never, and then a few years later, it's like, oh, the pain's kind of gone. So we'll see if there's number 2. But right now we're just enjoying seeing the impact that this book is helping and making for people who really do feel like they've fallen out of love with what they do and they've got more to give.
Now, as you can see, I didn't just do one book, so I know it's another one in you, but it is something about when they ask that, when's the next one? When's the next one? I'm like, oh my goodness, let me get through this first one. So kudos to you, for representing and getting your book out there. Cause the message is out there and you've been able to tell that story. And I think other people needed to hear it too. So kudos to you.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thanks. Now, with that title that you talked about, the idea of never hating Mondays again is prevalent throughout your work and the book. Why is that concept so important?
People don't believe that you can truly love Mondays. I think it's the biggest lie we tell ourselves, right? It's like, well, nobody really loves Mondays. And this is why we call it work and not fun and all these other things. And the reality is we generally cannot compartmentalize our lives. So you can't have a crappy job and have a fulfilled life because there's a spillover effect that happens. And so getting this right and being able to step into a career that serves you, that, that energizes you and that you're able to play to your strengths lifts all other parts of your life with it. And, I'm not a life coach. I'm not your airy fairy girl. Like, we're not going to manifest our way to success, although I think mindset is really important. However, I do believe, and I've never believed more strongly, that requiring yourself and holding yourself accountable to not settling, no longer compromising until you are stepping into a situation where you know that you love every Monday and you don't get that pit in your stomach on Sunday night thinking, I cannot suffer these fools another minute. And like, if I have to sit through one more meeting or if I have to get mansplained to one more time or whatever. And so when you start with that basic premise that it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. It is as vital to your personal livelihood and lifespan as it is to your career. And you start to, and the big thing we talk about in the book and we talk about in our coaching practice is really treating your career like a business. And you become the CEO of You Inc. And it's interesting because I was coaching a brand new client this morning, and this happens all the time. And she is smart as hell. And she's leading a massively huge team. And she's been working her tail off for 5 years on a promise to become an officer. A new guy just came in and now wants to demote her and make her work twice as hard for 2 more years before she gets this. So I'm like, how many broken promises are you going to still sit through before you call BS on this? And then I'm like, all right, so now you're the CEO of You Inc. And you have a brand new client that just came to you and said, I have all this work I need you to do for 2 years and I might be able to pay you after that. As a business owner, what would you say? You'd say, absolutely not. And so she's got her big meeting on Friday. Can't wait to hear how it goes. But these are the traps that we fall into. And it breaks my heart. It makes me very angry, actually. Sometimes I have to go check myself. But these are the things that when we start to say, I'm going to do what fires me up and what energizes me. I'm going to play to my strengths so I can thrive and make the impact that I know I'm here to make. I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to compromise anymore. And when you put yourself in that mindset, then taking the actions to do that is much easier than you think.
That is good. That's good. CEO Inc. of your own self. I love it. I love it.
CEO of you Inc. Exactly.
Yep. I love it. I love it. That's great. Yeah. And so when you talk about that, sometimes there are career changes, which can be daunting. What advice do you have for engineers and professionals looking to pivot to a different field?
Same advice I have for everybody, right? Which is you can do it, right? There's a lot of things that we think hold us back. Like we're going to have to give up something. We'll have to make less money, take a lower, role, step back in terms of our impact and influence. And no one wants to lose everything that we've worked so hard for, which is why we tend to keep ourselves stuck, because we immediately go into the scarcity mindset that we have to trade off something else in order to be happy, which I'm telling you right now is BS, right? Absolutely not. That's not how it works. And you can thrive. And here's 3 secrets on how to do it. So the first thing you want to do is really understand where your strengths are. What are the things that energize you that you could do for 12 hours a day and end up more energized than when you started? So for example, for me, I'm good at a lot of things, but I love this. I love being on a stage with keynote speeches and working with my clients and our coaches. Love that stuff. Now I can run the business and do the finances and the strategy and the social media and all that stuff. But after about an hour, I'm spinning in my chair throwing pencils at the ceiling, right? Because I'm just like, I'm bored. I don't love it. This stuff, bring it on all day. So find your superpower. Find that thing that you love, because that's chances are good. Those are your strengths, the things that you're good at. That's step 1. Step 2 is you want to find a place where those superpowers are in high demand and in short supply. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. One of my clients, he was a lifelong financial services exec. And in financial services, it's very common to reduce your staff by 10 to 20% every single year. It's just how it goes. And so over time, you get used to doing more with less, because just because he let his people go and his budget kept getting cut didn't mean that he didn't have to innovate and get the work done and serve customers and keep people motivated. And yet when he was done with financial services, like, this isn't fun for me anymore. Where he was able to pivot to was an organization that has never had to learn how to do more with less. They were one of those big name startups that just always had money and always investment dollars. And whenever there was a problem, there was more money, more people, more tools that they could throw at it. And so after this company went public, and after their competition got their act together, and after they started losing money, their board was losing their mind, and their shareholders were angry. Because despite how smart these people were, the CEO and his leadership team had never had to do more or less because they grew up in this company. They were like early 40s. And here comes my client who just doesn't even know that that's a superpower because it's so instinctive for him. And not only does he come in to do this and start to show them how to, but he shows them how to do that. He takes this service mindset towards not just me and my team. That's going to make it awesome. I'm going to show everybody else how to do it too. And now he's a rock star, right? So that's what I mean by finding a place where your superpower is in high demand and in short supply. And then the third pro tip for your listeners today is to start to make that pivot from being paid for what you do to being paid for what you know. And when you do that, you really start to thrive. And when you think about it, when you walk into a situation that's just completely natural for you, very much in need wherever you're working, and you're starting to able to share your wisdom, now all of a sudden, they're not paying you for the 15 minutes it took for you to solve that problem. They're paying you for the 10 years it took you to be able to solve that problem in 15 minutes. And that's how you play bigger. And that's how you make that shift. And there's a million other nooks and crannies that we help our clients navigate. But at a high level, if you do those 3 things, you will always step into a career of abundance.
I love it. I mean, you're giving us some tips. I hope the listeners are just taking great notes because you're giving some great gems. And I love it. I love it. So thank you for sharing
Excellent.
that. Now, as we transition to success, how do you define success?
Oh, I think for me and a lot of people that I'm around, success is a moving target. And I think it's important for us to check in with ourselves and decide what is important to us now. And especially as women, but I think everyone, we have seasonality within our careers and within our lives. And to really understand where that seasonality is and how we show up as leaders and how we show up for ourselves. Early in my corporate career, it was all about climbing the corporate ladder. That was success for me. Every promotion, every comp change, all those things, every big bonus check, that is what I was chasing because I grew up poor. My mother was homeless. I was not going to end up like that no matter what. And, I was driven and ambitious to do that. But then once I knew that I was in the C-suite and I was, I had made it to where I wanted to be, then my success changed. And it started to become about my team and about the business results and about those types of things. And that's how I measured success. Now today, my idea of success is working a 40 a week and growing our company that's doubling in size every year, despite the fact that I only work a 4-day week. And the joy that I see my clients being able to step into when they get there, when they get where they want to go, and seeing our coaches just really deliver the same impact and results. And so I'm more about that balance now and being able to say, you know what, I'm good. Like I'm going to hang out on Fridays and Fridays are going to be Tammy Day. And it's just really nice to be able to do that. So I think in terms of how you define success, I think step into the seasonality, check in, because there is nothing worse than running a race to get up and look around and wonder, how did I get here? Like, is this it? Is this really all there is after working so hard? And what that means is you've been running the wrong race and you didn't check in with yourself to see what is important to me now and accept the fact that things have changed and may not be what others want for you.
That's good. That's good. I mean, yeah, everybody has some expectations of you, but yeah, it's all about, what is it for you? Staying focused.
That's right.
Yep.
Exactly.
So when you talk about that, we could go back. Let's go one more time to the CEO, of your career. You often talk about becoming the CEO of your career, and I think you've explained a little bit of it already. But can you explain just a little bit more of what this means and how engineers can apply this mindset to their own careers? Yep.
Absolutely. So when you talk about becoming the CEO of You Inc. and of your career and treating your career like a business, what we're talking about here is you already have the skills that you need to make the changes that you want. Because if you were just to apply the business skills that you have to your career, then those are the things that you need to know how. So when you think about work, right, you know how to drive strategy, you know how to create a vision, you know how to execute, right? You understand how to work with your stakeholders because nobody works in a vacuum. And you understand that, you need people to say good things about you in the room when you're not there in order to get promoted and to get those bonuses and all that other kind of stuff that we work for. And so what if you took all of those skills that you have and that you use every day at work and you apply them to you? And you create your strategy, your vision, you execute on that vision. You're working on your power base and making sure that you've got the right people around you in terms of making things happen for you and influencing as well as helping others. And there's all these other things that we do or we could do in terms of how we run our career. And that client example that I had from this morning is a perfect one because it happens all the time. And the other thing, it's interesting, that I see happen all the time, especially with ambitious women, is when you talk about strategy and vision and execution. Here's an analogy that I like to use. So if you think about it, your vision, let's assume you're going to take a 5-hour road trip. So whether you're going to the beach or to the mountains, you're going away for a long weekend. So you decide where you go. It's 5 hours away and you put that pin in the map. That's your vision. Then it's time to set your nav system, right? And you're like, okay, how do you want to go? Do you want to get the fastest way? Do you want to avoid toll roads? Do you want to take the scenic route? Maybe see a few points of interest along the way. Like, how are you going to achieve that vision? Right? That's your strategy. Then when it comes time to execute, you get in the car, you put your stuff in, you hit nav, and you start to go. And guess what happens? Every time about an hour into that ride, your nav is going to say, danger ahead. There is traffic, there is construction, there is something, and you have a choice to make. Do you want to take this other route? Sit in traffic or peel off and have lunch somewhere, right? And we make these decisions every day. You push that button and you keep going. But in our careers, as soon as the navigation system says you're not going to get there the way you thought, then we just turn around and go home. And so I would encourage everyone, when you're thinking about having that vision, building your strategy, but then also having that resilience to be able to say, okay, I'm going to go left instead of right. I may not get there in 5 hours. It may take me 6, but I'm still on track to where I want to go. And these are the types of things that we start to change in how we navigate our careers when we start to take that accountability and show up as the CEO.
That's good. That's good. And I love the analogy. That was as much as a visual, guiding us through how we should think in that process. It's great. It's great. Now, what causes people to feel unfulfilled, and what should they do if they feel stuck in a career that no longer serves them?
Yeah, I think the feeling of unfulfillment or lack of fulfillment really comes from our inability to make an impact. And it was interesting. So I started the business and he was trying to figure out who we're serving and listening to, clients and their goals and their objectives and all the things that, that they were interested in. I thought it would be money and title and power and influence and all that stuff. And it's not. The one word that showed up all the time was impact. I was like, that's interesting. And so I find that when people feel unfulfilled, it's because they're not playing to their strengths enough. And they're not making the impact that they know they can make. And so that's when you need to reset. And you can do that within your company. You don't always have to leave, or you can make a change. But at the end of the day, what you need to do is to connect your aspirations, the things that get you up in the morning, regardless of what job you have, the purpose you're here to fulfill, and connect those to the company's biggest goals. Because if you can take your personal so what in terms of what motivates you and what gets you out of bed in the morning, and you can apply those superpowers to help the company achieve their best goals, now all of a sudden you're making a huge impact. And that's why people feel stuck, I think. It's just because I call it the zombie apocalypse, right? I do believe that there's an apathetic haze that has just settled over corporations and no one cares anymore. And there's this massive zombie apocalypse. But people don't want to feel like zombies. And companies don't want zombies working for them. And so if two groups that have so much in common and they want the same thing, but we keep getting further and further apart. And here's a really good example of some surveys that have come out. So Gallup did 2 surveys. One was a global survey on employee satisfaction. And believe it or not, globally, about 80% of knowledge workers are satisfied with their job. Sounds pretty good, right? But then when they went about and talked about employee engagement, how many people actually care about what they're doing, that number went down to 25%. So there is this, 55 to 60% of people who are just showing up. Good enough is close enough. But no one really feels that way. It's just, it's a paycheck and I'm sucking it up and I'm getting it done. But at the end of the day, we need, you need to realize, are you in that 60%? Because if you are, then tap into that ambition, you leverage your superpowers and go make an impact for the organization that you're working for or someone else.
That's good. Man, you give us some great tips and just awareness and ways to think about it and different perspective of it as well. Now, as we close out, what final piece of advice can you give to engineers to succeed in today's environment?
I would strongly recommend to our lovely engineering community to focus on building really strong leadership skills. Because here's what I find with people in STEM. You typically get promoted because of your technical capabilities. You're the best scientist, you're the best engineer, you're the best mathematician, you're the best whatever. But we focus so much on the technical, and at some point in time, as you move through the leadership ranks, you are going to be leading people who do things you do not know how to do. And so knowing how to do that and building those skills and that awareness as early as possible in your career to be able to know how to inspire and to trust and, empower and hold people accountable at the same time. All of these things are as important as the technical aspects of your career. And typically that is where, because I work a lot with women in STEM, and typically that is where they get stuck. And we've got this program that's called Own Your Power. And it's 5 power moves that women typically get jammed up with, in terms of their leadership skills. And it was interesting because we brought this program to Cornell University a few years back. Because what was happening at Cornell is in their postgraduate college, they had a 50-50 representation of men and women in STEM. That's fantastic, right? Everybody's just shooting for that. That was great. And Cornell also has amazing entrepreneurial incubators for these STEM areas. And the inventions that were coming out are just like making the world a better place in the most real way. But what they found is that only 30% of the women were showing up to compete, even though they had all these, great ideas. And so what we did is we put these women through the Own Your Power program first before they went in to play in the big leagues, because it was just that extra something that they needed to get into the game. And so I would encourage you, if you feel like you're playing small, if you've got these great ideas and you want to do something about that, or you need that to get recognized, obviously we're always happy to help, but, look for things like Own Your Power to really help you step into the things that you need to do to show up bigger for yourself and for your ideas and for your organization and your team.
That's good. That's good. Now, I know you've got a lot of resources you've shared. Can you tell the people as far as how they can get more from you, from all that you've been able to share, some different things, ways to get in touch with you from that way to find out more?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. And so you can always, what I'd love to invite our listeners to do is to reach out and, first of all, connect with me on LinkedIn. Tell me what you thought about the show, because I love getting that feedback. So it's always fun when I go into my mail and find that. So please reach out and connect. You can also learn more about our coaching programs. We've got an Own Your Power Masterclass that's actually starting on October 1st of this year. And so we'll be opening up early registration for that very shortly. And that's at careerwinnerscircle.com. And you definitely need to buy the book. If you do not love Every Monday, then you need to buy the book, and you can go to escapingthecareertrap.com for that, and also to learn how to bring me in on speaking engagements. I do a lot of women in leadership speaking with corporations and kickoff meetings and conferences and stuff like that as well. So lots of ways for us to engage as your listeners have that need.
Awesome. Tammy, you are amazing. And I just so glad that be able to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for being a great guest on the show.
Tiffany, this has been great. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you won't miss our upcoming episodes featuring interviews with inspired women, engineers, discussions about industry trends, and much more. Go to womeninengineeringpodcast.com, where you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, may your engineering endeavors be as remarkable as the women whose stories we are sharing. Stay curious, keep innovating, and engineer a better future.